Chapter 58, Great Gift for Great Man. How much is that knife? Asked Han Sen curiously. 100 million, the blacksmith said coldly, pushing Han Sen out. 100 million? What material did you use to make that? Han Sen could not help but asked. 75% Z steel, the blacksmith said. Next time you need to buy something, come here directly. 75% Z steel? He must be exaggerating. With the current technology, we can't even produce alloy with more than 5% Z steel. Han Sen whispered to himself. He didn't say anything though, since he wouldn't buy it anyway. Back home, Han Sen carefully reviewed the dagger. Pulling it out from the wooden sheath, Han Sen suddenly felt a cold breeze. The dagger was 8 inches long, its blade green with ripple patterns. The angle of the blade was very small, about just 20 degrees. The edge of the blade was as thin as onion skin with double blood grooves. The handle was made of high-tech materials with ergonomic design, so it had a comfortable grip. Han Sen drew the alpha alloy broadsword out and slashed the dagger at the broadsword to test the hardness and toughness of the dagger. Alloy with 5% Z steel should be much stronger than this broadsword, so it shouldn't chip. Crack! The broadsword was chopped into halves by the dagger and half of the blade fell to the ground. My God! Han Sen was taken aback. He then remembered that the blacksmith had said, this dagger was made from the cutting blade of a manufacturing machine, so it was meant to cut alloy. Checking the blade of the dagger, Han Sen found absolutely no damage. *#T. My broadsword. Han Sen suddenly realized that he had destroyed a weapon that could be sold for $1 million in the store and let out a scream. He had thought that the dagger might leave a mark on the broadsword, but didn't expect the dagger to be so sharp that it could cut off the broadsword. While banging his head with his hands in frustration, he heard the ringtone from his comlink and saw Zhang Danfeng's number on the screen. He answered the call. Sen, come to Twilight. I have a gift for you, said Zhang Danfeng excitedly. What gift? Asked Han Sen. You'll know when you get here. See ya, replied Zhang Danfeng, keeping Han Sen in suspense. Han Sen changed his outfit and went to Twilight Tavern, which was a restaurant Zhang Danfeng often took him to. The dishes served here were delicious and the decoration was outstanding. When he arrived at the reserved private room, Han Sen was surprised to see Han Hao there as well. Han Hao saw him and looked very uncomfortable. Han Hao forced a smile and said hello. Han Sen smiled back at him, and was then pulled aside by Zhang Danfeng. Being a private person, Han Sen thought it was quite alright if Han Hao didn't want to have any contact with him, and he had no hard feeling about it. Zhang Danfeng did not pay attention to any of these and asked Han Sen to sit on the sofa. Zhang summoned a white saber-toothed tiger beast soul, which turned into a sharp knife in his hands. Showing a few tricks with the knife, he asked proudly, Sen, what do you think of my newly gained mutant beast soul? One word, awesome. Han Sen gave him a thumbs up. Han Sen had wanted a mutant beast soul weapon for a while, but he had no luck with beast souls recently. Old friend, now I have a new knife, so I want to give my old weapon to you, if you don't mind. Zhang Danfeng slipped Han Sen an alpha alloy broadsword. Han Sen was a bit surprised to see the broadsword, which was of the same style as the one he just cut off. This broadsword, Han Xin was touched. Zhang Danfeng was such a dear friend that he would just give away a weapon worth $1 million to him. Before Han Sen had time to say something, the door of the private room was pushed open and a fat woman draped in jewels squeezed herself in. Son, I saw you when you came up here. You said you had important things to do when I asked you to go Mr. Who's banquet. So, this is what you call important? What do you expect to gain from hanging out with these lads? Mr. Who has invited his son's friends, who are all young leaders on planet Roka. You should make friends with them to succeed in the future. Han Yume threw a rampage at Han Hao, taking him out. Mom, by the time Han Hao wanted to explain, he had been pulled out the room. Stop it. The young master of Sunwood Mining, Lin Beifeng, is also here at the banquet. I heard that he is also in steel armor shelter now. If you two can bond, you would do so great in the shelter, said Han Yumei. Han Hao was a little depressed. He had come here to make things right with Han Sen and use his connections to enter Qin Xian's steel armor gang. Han Yumei's words had rendered that impossible. Han Hao thought that Han Sen was definitely sleeping with Qin Xian to get where he was. Or else how could he confront Luo Tianyang and be recruited into Bullseye? Although Han Hao was disgusted by a gigolo like his cousin, he wanted to use Han Sen's connections to enter Steel Armor Gang himself. That was why he didn't show up at the banquet and came to Zhang Danfeng's gathering instead. Surprisingly, Mr. Hu's banquet was also held in this building, and Han Yumei happened to see him. Hence he had no time to mend his relationship with Han Sen. Never mind, the young master of Sunwood Mining, Lin Beifeng, happens to be in my shelter, and now he has come to Planet Roca for the banquet. This is indeed a great opportunity. I heard he is an upstart and spends money like water. It would be great if I could cozy up to him, thought Han Hao, as he straightened his clothing and followed Han Yumei to the banquet hall. Chapter 59, Lucky Dude. Your aunt is outrageous, Zhang Danfeng was upset. It does not matter. They are strangers to me, said Han Sen casually. He then asked curiously, who is this Lin Beifeng she was talking about? Han Sen also knew a guy named Lin Beifeng who had traveled through the mountains and ended up in steel armor shelter. Han Sen had even saved his life. Just one lucky dude. Zhang Danfeng started to tell Han Sen about Sunwood Mining. Sunwood Mining used to be a small company with several mines, and later they bought a garbage planet to deposit their waste, where they ended up finding a lot of precious minerals. Within 20 years, by selling the rare minerals they discovered on that planet, Sunwood Mining had become a prominent interplanetary mining group, the boss of which was Lin Beifeng's father. Lin Beifeng had just entered God's sanctuary and was already known for his generosity. Many were trying to make friends with him for that. Such good luck, Han Sen sighed. Such is life. He must have outperformed billions of other sperms to be who he is, Zhang Danfeng smiled and said. But Sunwood Mining has no facility here on planet Roca. What is he doing here? In the banquet hall of the same building, the social elite were chatting and drinking, many of whom had already entered Second God's sanctuary in their 30s. However, the focus of the banquet was a 16-year-old teenager. If Han Sen were here, he would recognize the teenager was Lin Beifeng who he had saved. Lin Beifeng was entertaining all guests gracefully. From his good manners, no one would think he was nouveau riche, and several socialites were attracted by him. Han Yumei and Han Hao had wanted to speak with Lin Beifeng, but they found no chance as there were too many people who were more powerful than them at the banquet, and everyone wanted to talk to Lin Beifeng. Naturally, they didn't dare to offend these people by cutting in. The banquet was over. When Lin Beifeng was stepping outside the building, they finally found an opportunity and wanted to approach him. At the time, Han Sen and Zhang Danfeng also happened to come over. When they saw Han Hao, Zhang Danfeng wanted to greet him, so Han Sen had to follow. Before Zhang Danfeng could finish his sentence, Han Yumei pushed him and Han Sen aside and said harshly, "You two stay away from my son. Especially you, Han Sen, you are already notorious in steel armor shelter, so do not implicate your cousin. Don't even say you know him. Or I will come after your family." Han Yumei then walked toward Lin Beifeng with Han Hao. Zhang Danfeng was stunned and asked Han Sen, "What? You and Han Hao are in the same shelter?" Han Sen nodded. "Let's go to a quiet place and I'll explain to you." Having heard Han Yumei's words, Han Sen knew that Han Hao had told her about what had happened in steel armor shelter. Han Yumei and Han Hao finally managed to approach Lin Beifeng. As Lin Beifeng happened to be looking in their direction, Han Yumei said hurriedly, "Mr. Lin, this is my son Han Hao. He's in the same shelter as you. Lin Beifong acted as if he hadn't heard her and directly went past her and her son. Han Yumei was dumbfounded and watched Lin Beifong leaving. Lin Beifong walked faster and faster toward Han Sen and Zhang Danfeng, who were just leaving. He grabbed Han Sen's arm and cried, "Sen, I have finally found you. Brother, I've missed you." Lin Beifong then gave Han Sen a big hug. Both Han Yumei and Han Hao were shocked. They had no idea how Lin Beifong would know Han Sen and call him brother. Han Sen pushed Lin Beifong away and frowned. "Why are you here?" Lin Beifong wasn't offended at all and quickly offered cigarettes to Han Sen and Zhang Danfeng. He said excitedly, "I came to look for you. I heard you live on planet Roca, so I came here. But I don't have your address and it took me days to ask about it. Now I've met you, you must look out for me in the future." Han Sen saw everyone was looking this way and said to Lin Beifong, "Let's not talk here. We can catch up later." Han Sen and Zhang Danfeng went out, and Lin Beifong quickly followed them. "Sen, my aircraft was parked outside. Let me give you a ride." Han Yumei and Han Hao watched Lin Beifong cheerfully following Han Sen around and couldn't believe him to be the elegant young master they saw at the banquet. Han Hao, it was indeed Han Sen who was talking to Mr. Lin? Han Yumei still couldn't believe her eyes and asked Han Hao after they were out of the building. Han Hao clenched his teeth and said, "Yes, it's him." "Why on earth did Mr. Lin know him and respect him like that?" asked Han Yumei. "Well, there is nothing remarkable about him. He's just a gigolo, using a woman's connections, putting his cousin down." Han Hao was green with envy. "What? Didn't you say that he offended a powerful lady in steel armor shelter and was having a hard time?" asked Han Yumei. "If he weren't Qin Xian's boy toy, how would Mr. Lin know someone like him?" Han Hao then bitterly recounted Han Sen's experience, adding his imagination here and there. No wonder he could come up with $2 million. A gigolo. I've always known he was a scourge, a disgrace to our name. Our ancestors would be so mad had they known, said Han Yumei viciously. Filled with jealousy and hatred, the mother and son left the building. Seeing Lin Beifong opening the door of the aircraft for Han Sen and Zhang Danfeng, their faces darkened further. Chapter 60, Goldenhorn Shura. Han Sen made some brief explanation to Zhang Danfeng after he parted with Lin Beifong. Han Sen understated everything and didn't say much about Han Hao, as he knew Zhang Danfeng wouldn't let Han Hao off easily had he told Zhang Danfeng what had really happened. Zhang Danfeng thought they were always good brothers and friends because they grew up together and certainly would not accept what Han Hao had done. Walking on the way to the Maglev train station, Han Sen was wondering what he should take with him to Dark Swamp. There were almost no human activities there, so he would definitely return with lots of prey. Even if it weren't for the Beast Soul Arrow, Han Sen would still want to go there. He now had Sacred Blood Beast Soul Wings and the swamp that might be dangerous to others was easy for him. Han Sen suddenly heard a glitch sound and all the lights started flashing. Surprised, he looked up and saw a meteor-like fireball quickly falling from the sky toward his direction. Warning! Warning! Unidentified flying object detected. Bang! After the alarm of the planet's defense system sounded for a few times, the fireball hit a tall building followed by an explosion. It turned dark as the electricity was out. Even the earth seemed to have shaken a bit. Han Sen looked up to the collapsed building and saw a strange spherical aircraft crashed into the building with half of its body sticking out, surrounded by burning flames and thick smoke. People were screaming, crying, and running around. This area was a school district and the building hit was a school's main building. Those running from the building were mostly students about 10 years old. Because it was a public school in the integrated compulsory education system, it was not equipped with a good security system. After the explosion, there was no immediate response. The electricity had been cut off for some reason and the automatic fire protection system was also paralyzed. In the dark, people could only see the fire at the impact site. Hansen saw the appearance of the aircraft and suddenly clenched his fists. He had seen aircrafts like this one before. A spherical aircraft was beyond current human technologies and could only be produced by the only enemy of mankind in the interstellar era, Shuras. Shura was the name given to them by mankind, and their true name could only be described in their own language. Shuras looked like men except that their males had one horn on their head and their females had two. Both Shura males and females wore masks from childhood. Their masks and horns symbolized their identity. Human beings had fought them for centuries in the space. In the beginning, because both Shura's physique and technology were superior, men kept losing in the battles against them. About 200 years ago, mankind discovered God's sanctuary and started to gain geno points in this other world, so humans' physique had been greatly improved. Gradually, humans were able to hold the line and face off Shuras. Planet Roka was a commercial planet and was nowhere near the war zone. Hansen felt incredible to see a Shura aircraft here. He grew up on planet Roka and had only seen Shuras and Shura aircrafts on the news and Skynet. When Hansen was staring at the aircraft, he saw a 7-year-old girl who was hung on the collapsed building with her clothes caught on a steel bar sticking out from the building. She tried to climb back into the building by grabbing the steel bar, but she was not strong enough. Struggling, her clothes caught on the steel bar were about to tear. Face covered in tears and hands covered with dust and blood, she was almost desperate. Even if she could get inside the building, there was fire anywhere and there was no way she could survive. The little girl gradually lost her strength and her clothes was slowly tearing. From such a height, even an adult who had max mutant geno points would fall to death, not to mention a kid. Bam! Next to the little girl, the door of the Shura aircraft suddenly opened and out came a Shura with a single golden horn on his head and a white mask that covered all his face but his eyes. The Shura was in a broken suit of alloy armor and bleeding dark green blood all over. The blood of Shura was different from that of human and was as green as bile, which was another way to tell if someone was Shura. Hansen was shocked by the look of this Shura. The decors and materials of the Shura masks had a lot of meanings behind them, but Hansen didn't really know much about that. However, just by the look of his golden horn, Hansen knew this Shura was not ordinary. Shura's horns were their most prominent symbol of identity. Their horns were in 4 colors: black, white, gold, and purple. The black-horned were civilians, the white-horned were elites, the golden-horned were aristocrats, and the purple-horned were royalties. From this random aircraft had walked out a Shura aristocrat, which surprised Hansen. The Shura held in his hands a black katana. The Shuras all had great physiques. Any adult Shura could match a human evolver in a hand-to-hand fight. Stronger Shuras could even reach the level of surpassers. The Shura came out from the aircraft and saw little girl crying. With a cruel gleam in his eyes, he raised his katana and slashed it toward the little girl's head. Hansen summoned the Black Beetle, Bloody Slayer and Purple-Winged Dragon all at once and turned himself into a giant winged centaur covered in golden armor, and even his wings were covered in golden armor. Boom! The huge wings brought him to the middle of the building almost instantaneously. Taking the girl with one hand, Hansen grabbed the blade of the Shura's katana with his other hand. Blood suddenly flowed out along the blade. Chapter 61, Why Not Dodge? Fong Mingquan had been very depressed recently. As a reporter, he had been in charge of a program about God's sanctuary on Skynet. Although it was not super popular, the program was gaining momentum and he was considered a minor celebrity. Because of a decision made by the management, he was transferred to a remote planet, Roka. His job was so-called new market development, which actually meant that he was pushed out because he was in the way of others. As Fong Mingquan understood, now his program belonged to a recent graduate who was related to a board member. Knowing nothing, the kid had screwed the show up and many loyal audience were asking to transfer Fang Mingquan back, which didn't change anything. Fang Mingquan knew clearly that he could never go back. Planet Roca had very few resources and was far away from the economic center, so there was really no breaking news to be covered. For the few months he had been here, Fang Mingquan were wasting his time doing interviews of minor celebrities who thought too highly of themselves, which completely disgusted him. How can I leave this *T-hole? Fang Mingquan was wandering aimlessly in the street, holding a small metal jug and sipping liquor from it from time to time. Although he was upset, Fang Mingquan still kept looking around out of professional habits. Suddenly, darkness fell and there was a huge explosion and fires. As a good journalist, Fang Mingquan turned on his recording device. A Shura aircraft. Fang Mingquan saw the aircraft and his heart started pounding. He hurried off to the nearest high-rise as he kept shooting with the recording device. Soon, Fang Mingquan noticed the little girl as well. When he saw the golden-horned Shura coming out the aircraft, he was thrilled and worried at the same time. He was thrilled because this was a great opportunity for him. A Shura aircraft falling on planet Roca was such a rare incident. Plus the Shura in it was an aristocrat. This was the golden ticket for him to become a more famous reporter. But at the same time, Fang Mingquan was also worried about the fate of the little girl. As a professional journalist, regardless of his urge to yell, "Help!" Fang Mingquan stayed quiet and just recorded and uploaded everything faithfully. However, when seeing the Shura slashing his katana at her, Fang Mingquan saw her frightened little face and could not help but cried, "Someone save her!" But no one could respond to that. The rescue team had not arrived, and even if someone had an aircraft it would be hard to park it on such height. Boom! A pair of golden wings cut into the frame and a majestic figure took the little girl into his arm, his other hand catching the blade of the Shura. Blood dropped down from the katana, and Fang Mingquan felt as if his heart had stopped. Someone rescued the child. Fang Mingquan burst out a cry. Han Sen was shocked when he caught the blade of the katana. His sacred blood armor couldn't even block the sharp katana and his palm was still cut. Although the cut wasn't deep, he realized this Shura was a tough opponent. Han Sen flew back several yards flapping his wings, holding the little girl in one arm. He suddenly felt a chill from behind and quickly turned around. The Shura was raising his katana and was about cut it at Han Sen. Han Sen gritted his teeth and span around in the air, barely escaping the Shura's attack. The Shura jumped up and stepped on the wall, throwing himself at Han Sen. Does he has some genes from a flea? Han Sen thought and flew to a building nearby, broke a window and put the little girl inside. Han Sen took a look inside the room and found it to be a classroom with dozens of children inside, shivering in the corner. Damn! Before Han Sen could figure out a solution, the Shura was already in his face with the katana in hand, hatching it down at Han Sen. Han Sen could dodge this attack, but when he was ready to move, he suddenly froze. Behind him was the classroom full of children. If he dodged, the Shura would enter the classroom. The Shura was on a human planet and there was no way he could survive here with so many enemies around him. He would choose to kill as many as he could before he were to die. By no means would Han Sen let him enter the classroom. Facing the katana, Han Sen only leaned to his side to protect his vital organs, while throwing a punch toward the Shura's face. The Shura was slightly surprised, as he did not expect Han Sen to stay where he was. Although the Shura didn't put all his strength into this attack, his katana still cut through the sacred blood armor into Han Sen's shoulder, making a squeaking sound when its blade met the bone. At the same time, Han Sen's fist also hit the Shura in the face, forcing him to bend his body backwards. The material of the Shura's mask was made of extreme tough material and did not crack at Han Sen's punch. The Shura caught the alloy framework in the wall with his toes and swung back to reach for the katana stuck in Han Sen's shoulder. Not wanting to give his katana back, Han-sen blocked his palm with one hand and punched at the Shura's throat with the other hand. The Shura returned a punch at Han-sen's chest. And soon it became a fist fight. In a short while, Han-sen started spitting up blood. Why didn't he dodge? Since he could fly, he could have dodged the attacks, wondered Fang Mingquan. Sharing his thought were the audience watching Fang Mingquan's webcasting. Chapter 62, Golden Meteor. Fang Mingquan's new program didn't have much popularity yet, but there were still some old fans who had followed him here. Seeing the webcasting was on, many of them had chosen to watch. When they saw the Shura was to kill the little girl, they were all praying that someone could save her. And when Han-sen showed up, they were all thrilled. However, what they didn't understand was why Han-sen didn't choose to dodge the katana and thus lost his advantage. He could have dodged as he could fly. Fang Mingquan suddenly realized something and focused the lens behind Han Senator. Everyone suddenly saw that the room was a classroom with dozens of shivering children in it. Fang Mingquan and the audience had thus realized why Han-sen didn't dodge. If he had dodged, the Shura would have entered the classroom and caused unimaginable damage. Although the Shura was stopped outside the classroom, Han-sen had been severely injured in the shoulder and were still bleeding, which rendered him the losing side. But this was an adult Shura with a golden horn. Even if he hadn't practiced any skills yet, his physique would be as strong as an evolver, if not stronger. Dollar, it's Dollar. The audience recognized him and left many comments under, reminding more people that it was Dollar. Fang Mingquan had long recognized Dollar. After all, he was working in journalism. The video of Han-sen passing the robot channel was such a hit that he had watched it as well. Because he had watched the video, he knew that Han-sen was still unevolved while his opponent could at least reach the level of an evolver, so this was not a fair fight. So were the audience aware of this? This is not good. Dollar has not become an evolver yet. Could he stop the Golden Horn Shura? Dollar, hold on. Damn, why am I not there? I would love to help him kill the Shura. Bang! Han-sen took another hit in the face. Although he was armored, his head was still ringing and his eyes even went blind for a second. Feeling a churning in the chest, he spilled up another mouthful of blood. Han-sen was very clear that he was far weaker than the Shura even after he had shape-shifted into the Blood Slayer. If the Shura hadn't already been hurt badly, Han-sen probably couldn't last this long at all. Fortunately, he had been practicing Jade Skin for a long time and had gained lots of Geno points, which allowed him to fight until now. Bang bang! Each time Han-sen punched at the Shura, he could only force the Shura to bend backward, while when the Shura punched at him, he would definitely bleed. But Han-sen knew that he could not step back. Seeing the malice in the Shura's eyes, Han-sen knew he had been eyeing the children in the classroom. Using his majestic body to block the window, Han-sen was hit in the head several times. He suddenly lost control of his body and leaned his shoulder toward the Shura, which allowed the Shura to pull out his katana from Han-sen's shoulder. Blood was splashing as the black blade was pulled out. Die, the Shura scowled as he hacked at Han-sen, both hands on the katana and eyes bloodshot. It was a gut-wrenching scene for Fang Mingquan and the audience to watch. The tender-hearted ones could not even bear to watch. Step back. You have tried. No one will blame you, some even said, as they could not bear to see Han-sen killed by the Shura. But with a gleam in his eye, Han-sen moved forward instead of backward when the katana fell, and threw himself at the Shura. Although the katana had hit Han-sen on the head, as the distance was shortened and the Shura's body had bounced off in the middle of his hacking, the speed of the katana was not high, and it only broke Han-sen's helmet and left a shallow wound on Han-sen's scalp. Without a pause, Han-sen flapped his wings and moved behind the Shura. He locked the Shura with his own body in the air so that the Shura could make no moves. Ghost Haunt had worked wonders. Han-sen was able to lock down the Shura who had much greater strength than himself. As he knew his shape-shifting time was almost up and his body would probably suffer permanent damage if he went over the time limit, Han-sen tumbled upside down with the Shura locked between his arms and jumped, speeding up toward the ground with his wings moving. "You are crazy," cried the Shura, with horror in his voice. At this moment, everyone seeing this was stunned and the comments online had stopped. Fang Mingxuan's lens followed the golden meteor falling rapidly toward the ground. Because other buildings had blocked the view, the golden meteor disappeared at the 6th floor of the building. All that could be heard was a bang, followed by silence. After a long time, a new comment appeared, $? Then there was a burst of comments, which were posted so fast that the words became a blur. Not in the mood to check the comments, Fang Mingquan desperately ran to the spot that Han-sen was falling to. He could vow that this was the fastest he had ever run in his life. When Fang Mingquan got there, there was already a crowd. The Shura was on the floor with his limbs twisted and there were even spiders cracking on the pavement made of high-tech materials. But he did not find the majestic golden figure here. $? $? did not die. Where did he go? As the comments were posted under the webcasting, Fang Mingquan looked around and asked people nearby and no one had seen $. The spot was in an alley and no one was here before they fell.